Maya Johnson wiped down the same table for the third time, her brown eyes scanning the dimly lit restaurant. The evening rush had ended hours ago, leaving only a handful of customers scattered across the worn vinyl booths. She moved quietly between tables, her soft footsteps barely audible on the checkered linoleum floor. At 24, Maya had worked at Romano's Italian restaurant for nearly 2 years, and she knew every creak of the floorboards, every stain on the tablecloths. The restaurant sat on the corner of 5th and Morrison, squeezed between a pawn shop and a dry cleaner in the old part of town. Most people avoided this neighborhood after dark, but Maya didn't have a choice. The tips here were decent enough to help her pay for night school, where she studied to become a teacher. Her dream felt distant most days, especially when she counted the crumpled bills in her apron pocket at closing time. Tonight felt different, though. A strange tension hung in the air like smoke from the kitchen's old grill. The regular customers had left earlier than usual, and even Tony, the loud-mouthed cook, had been unusually quiet. Maya noticed how the remaining staff kept glancing toward the back corner booth, where 3 men in expensive suits sat nursing their coffee. They had arrived separately throughout the evening, each one nodding to the others before taking their seats. Maya had served them without much thought at first. The tall one with silver hair ordered espresso, black. The younger man with the scar across his cheek asked for tiramisu. The third, heavy-set with gold rings on every finger, wanted nothing but sat watching the door. They spoke in low whispers, their words lost in the general hum of the restaurant's old air conditioning unit. As Maya collected empty plates from a nearby table, she couldn't help but notice how other customers seemed to give the 3 men a wide berth. Even Frank, the homeless man who usually lingered by the window booth, had gathered his belongings and shuffled out into the night earlier than usual. The atmosphere reminded Maya of the calm before a thunderstorm, when the air grows heavy and electric. She was refilling the coffee machine when the front door chimed. Maya looked up to see a woman entering alone. The newcomer was perhaps 60 years old with steel-gray hair pulled back in an elegant bun. She wore a simple black dress and carried herself with the kind of quiet authority that made people step aside without thinking. Her eyes swept the restaurant once before settling on the corner booth where the 3 men sat. Maya watched as the woman walked directly to their table. The men rose immediately, their chairs scraping against the floor. The silver-haired man pulled out a chair for her, and she sat without a word of thanks. It was clear she was someone important, someone these dangerous-looking men respected. Maya had grown up in neighborhoods where she learned to recognize power when she saw it, and this woman radiated it like heat from a furnace. The conversation at the corner booth grew more intense. Maya caught glimpses of their interaction as she went about her duties. The woman spoke rarely, but when she did, the 3 men leaned forward to catch every word. Their body language shifted from casual to attentive, like soldiers receiving orders from a general. Maya had seen enough movies to recognize what she was witnessing, but the reality felt surreal in the familiar setting of Romano's. As the evening wore on, Maya found herself drawn into their orbit. She refilled their coffee cups, cleared their plates, and tried to remain invisible while her curiosity grew. The woman's presence had transformed the entire restaurant. Even the kitchen staff had grown quiet, sensing something significant was happening in the dining room. During one of her passes by their table, Maya accidentally knocked over a salt shaker. As she bent to clean up the spilled salt, she heard the woman speaking in a voice so soft it was almost a whisper. The men strained to hear her words, their faces serious. Maya couldn't make out what was being said, but the tone was unmistakably that of someone giving important instructions. The woman noticed Maya cleaning up the salt and studied her for a moment. Their eyes met briefly, and Maya felt as if she was being evaluated, weighed, and measured in that single glance. The woman's expression revealed nothing, but Maya sensed a sharp intelligence behind those dark eyes. She finished cleaning quickly and retreated to the safety of the service station. As closing time approached, the restaurant had emptied except for the group at the corner booth. Tony had already cleaned the kitchen and left through the back door, mumbling something about getting home to his wife. The other waitress, Carmen, had clocked out an hour earlier, leaving Maya alone with the mysterious gathering. She began her closing routine, stacking chairs and wiping down surfaces, all while keeping one ear tuned to the conversation happening behind her. The 3 men seemed to be waiting for something, checking their watches and glancing toward the door. The woman sat calmly, her hands folded on the table, looking as composed as if she were having tea with old friends. Maya had never seen anyone project such quiet confidence, such understated control. It was both fascinating and frightening. As Maya swept the floor near their table, she overheard fragments of conversation. Words like territory and shipment and message drifted to her ears. She didn't understand the context, but the serious tone made it clear this was business of the most serious kind. The woman spoke again, her voice barely audible, and Maya saw all three men nod in unison. The realization hit Maya like a cold wave. She was witnessing something she was never meant to see, overhearing conversations she was never meant to hear. The woman in black wasn't just any customer. She was clearly the person in charge, the one these dangerous men answered to. Maya's hands trembled slightly as she continued her cleaning, trying to appear busy while her mind raced with the implications of what she had stumbled into. The night was about to take a turn that would change everything Maya thought she knew about herself, about courage, and about the power of speaking truth when it mattered most. As she moved around the nearly empty restaurant, she had no idea that within minutes she would find herself at the center of a moment that would be talked about for years to come. The soft-spoken woman in the corner booth was about to discover that sometimes the most powerful voices come from the most unexpected places. Maya was wiping down the counter when she heard the bell above the door chime again. This time, a young man stumbled in, his face pale and his clothes disheveled. He looked around desperately before his eyes landed on the woman at the corner booth. Maya could see the fear written across his features as he approached their table with hesitant steps. The three men tensed immediately, their hands moving instinctively toward their jackets. But the woman raised a single finger and they froze. She gestured for the young man to sit, and he collapsed into the empty chair like his legs could no longer support him. Maya pretended to organize the napkin dispensers while straining to hear what was happening. The young man's name was Danny, Maya learned from the fragments of conversation that reached her ears. He was perhaps 19 or 20, with the kind of baby face that made him look even younger. His hands shook as he tried to explain something to the woman, his words tumbling over each other in his panic. Maya caught mentions of money, a mistake, and repeated apologies. The woman listened without interruption, her expression unchanged. When Danny finished speaking, silence settled over the table like dust. The three men waited, their eyes fixed on their leader. Maya had never seen grown men look so deferential, so ready to act on a single word. The power dynamic was crystal clear. This woman's word was law. After what felt like an eternity, the woman spoke. Her voice was so quiet that Maya had to move closer, pretending to clean a nearby table. Even then, she could barely make out the words. The woman wasn't shouting or threatening. She spoke in the same gentle tone someone might use to discuss the weather, but Danny's face went white as paper. Maya watched as the young man nodded frantically, tears beginning to stream down his cheeks. He was begging now, his voice breaking as he pleaded for another chance, for forgiveness, for time. The woman continued speaking in that unnervingly calm voice, and Maya realized she was witnessing something she had only seen in movies, a real-life scene from the world she had grown up hearing whispered stories about. The silver-haired man reached into his jacket, and Maya's heart stopped. This was it. She was about to witness something terrible, something that would haunt her forever. But instead of a weapon, he pulled out a phone and placed it on the table. The woman gestured for Danny to pick it up, and he did so with trembling hands. Maya moved closer, her cleaning rag forgotten in her hands. She could hear Danny speaking into the phone, his voice choked with emotion. He was calling someone. His mother, Maya realized from the conversation. He was telling her he loved her, that he was sorry, that everything would be okay. The lie in his last words was obvious to everyone listening. When Danny hung up the phone, the woman began speaking again. This time, Maya was close enough to hear every word, and what she heard made her blood run cold. The woman wasn't just discussing Danny's fate. She was describing it in detail. The calm, matter-of-fact way she talked about violence was more terrifying than any shouting or threats could have been. Maya found herself frozen in place, her cleaning supplies clutched in her hands. She had always been quiet by nature, someone who observed rather than acted. Growing up in a rough neighborhood had taught her to keep her head down, to mind her own business, to survive by being invisible. But something about this moment felt different. Maybe it was the sight of Danny's tear-streaked face, or maybe it was the cold efficiency with which his fate was being decided. The three men were nodding along with their leader's quiet instructions. Maya could see they had done this before. Their casual acceptance of the violence being planned spoke to years of experience. Danny continued to cry silently, his shoulders shaking with each sob. He looked so young, so lost, so utterly alone in that moment. Maya thought about her own younger brother, Marcus, who was about Danny's age. Marcus had gotten mixed up with the wrong crowd a few years back, making stupid decisions that could have led him down a similar path. Only luck and Maya's intervention had kept him from ending up in a situation like this. The parallel wasn't lost on her. The woman finished giving her instructions and sat back in her chair. The silver-haired man reached for his phone to make a call, presumably to set the woman's plans in motion. Danny had stopped crying and now sat staring at the table, his face empty of all hope. He had accepted his fate with the resignation of someone who knew there was no escape. It was in that moment that Maya felt something shift inside her. All her life she had been the quiet one, the one who watched from the sidelines while others acted. She had learned to survive by being unnoticed, by never drawing attention to herself. But watching this young man accept his death sentence while these powerful people discussed it like a business transaction awakened something in her she didn't know existed. Maya set down her cleaning supplies and took a step toward the table. Then another. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears, but her feet kept moving. The rational part of her mind was screaming at her to stop, to walk away, to pretend she had seen nothing. But a larger part of her, a part she was just discovering, wouldn't let her turn back. The three men noticed her approach first, their conversation stopping mid-sentence. They looked at her with surprise and growing annoyance. This was clearly not the time for a waitress to be offering coffee refills. But Maya's eyes were fixed on the woman at the head of the table, the one whose quiet words held the power of life and death. Maya had never addressed a customer without being spoken to first. She had never inserted herself into someone else's business. She had certainly never interrupted what appeared to be a criminal organization conducting their affairs. But as she stood there, looking at this powerful woman who commanded such fear and respect, Maya felt her voice rising from somewhere deep inside her chest. She was about to discover that sometimes the most important words are spoken not by those with the most power, but by those with the most to lose. The next few minutes would prove that courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, and sometimes it comes from the most unexpected places. Maya's voice came out as barely more than a whisper, so soft that everyone at the table had to lean forward to hear her. "Excuse me," she said, her words floating across the sudden silence like leaves on still water. The three men stared at her in disbelief while the woman in black simply raised an eyebrow. "I couldn't help but notice," Maya continued, her voice still impossibly quiet, "that this young man seems very upset." She gestured gently toward Danny, who looked up at her with confused, red-rimmed eyes. "In my experience, people who are this scared usually have good reason to be." The silver-haired man started to speak, his face darkening with anger, but the woman silenced him with a slight gesture. She studied Maya with the same intense focus she might give to an interesting puzzle. Maya could feel the weight of that gaze, but she didn't back down. Something had awakened in her, something that demanded to be heard. "I've been working here for 2 years," Maya said, her soft voice somehow carrying clearly through the empty restaurant. "I've seen a lot of people come and go. Happy people, sad people, angry people. But I've never seen anyone look as terrified as this boy does right now." She paused, gathering her courage. "And I've never seen adults discuss hurting someone with such calm voices." The silence that followed was deafening. Maya could hear her own heartbeat, the hum of the refrigeration units, even the distant sound of traffic on the street outside. The three men looked like they couldn't believe what they were witnessing. A waitress, a nobody, was inserting herself into their business, speaking to their leader as if she had the right. But Maya wasn't finished. The words were coming from somewhere deep inside her, a place she had never accessed before. "You know what I think?" she said, her voice still soft but somehow filling the entire space. "I think this boy made a mistake. Maybe a big one, maybe a small one that got blown out of proportion, but I also think he's learned from it." Danny's eyes widened in amazement. No one had ever defended him before, certainly not a stranger who had nothing to gain and everything to lose. The three men shifted uncomfortably in their seats, unsure how to react to this unprecedented situation. Their world operated on clear rules: power, fear, respect, and consequences. A soft-spoken waitress didn't fit into any of those categories. The woman continued to study Maya with those sharp, calculating eyes. When she spoke, her voice was even quieter than Maya's had been. "You don't understand the situation," she said simply. "This boy has cost us a great deal of money. In our business, such mistakes have consequences." Maya nodded slowly as if she had expected this response. "I understand more than you might think," she replied, her voice maintaining that same gentle tone. "I grew up in neighborhoods where mistakes could get you killed, where owing the wrong person money could end your life, where young people like Danny here make choices they regret for the rest of their lives, however long those lives might be." She took a small step closer to the table, and Maya could see the three men tense. But the woman held up a hand, clearly intrigued by this unexpected development. Maya continued, her words flowing like water over stones, smooth and persistent. "But you know what I also learned growing up in those neighborhoods?" Maya said. "I learned that real power isn't about who can hurt someone the worst. Real power is about who can choose not to hurt someone when they have every reason to do it." She looked directly at the woman as she spoke. "Anyone can destroy. It takes someone truly strong to show mercy." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Maya could see the three men exchanging glances, clearly uncomfortable with the direction this conversation had taken. They were used to fear, to submission, to people begging for their lives. They weren't used to philosophical discussions about the nature of power, delivered in voices so soft they had to strain to hear. Danny was staring at Maya as if she were an angel who had materialized out of thin air. He couldn't understand why this stranger was risking her life for him, but he could see something in her eyes that gave him hope for the first time all evening. Maya felt his gaze but kept her attention focused on the woman at the head of the table. "Tell me," the woman said, her voice still quiet but with an edge of curiosity, "what makes you think this boy deserves mercy? What makes you think he's worth the risk you're taking right now?" Maya considered the question seriously. She looked at Danny, really looked at him, taking in his youth, his terror, but also something else. A spark of humanity that hadn't been extinguished despite everything he had been through. When she spoke again, her voice carried a conviction that surprised even her. "Because he's somebody's son," she said simply. "He's somebody's brother, maybe somebody's friend. He made a phone call to tell his mother he loved her, which means there's someone out there who will grieve if he doesn't come home tonight." Maya's voice grew even softer, forcing everyone to lean closer. "And because I think you're somebody's daughter too. Somebody raised you, cared about you, worried when you didn't come home." The woman's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Maya pressed on, sensing she had touched something important. "I'm not naive," she continued. "I know the world isn't fair, and I know people have to face consequences for their actions. But I also know that sometimes the strongest thing a person can do is choose compassion when everyone expects them to choose violence." The three men were no longer just uncomfortable. They were genuinely confused. This wasn't how these situations were supposed to go. People were supposed to mind their own business, to look the other way, to let the natural order of their world proceed without interference. A young black waitress with a voice like velvet wasn't supposed to stand in a nearly empty restaurant and challenge everything they understood about power and respect. But Maya wasn't finished. She had found her voice, and now that she had it, she realized she had more to say. The next words out of her mouth would determine not just Danny's fate, but her own as well. Maya took a deep breath, feeling the weight of every eye in the room upon her. The woman at the table hadn't moved, but Maya could sense a shift in her attention, as if she were recalculating everything she thought she knew about this evening. The silence stretched between them like a taut wire, ready to snap at any moment. "You want to know what I see when I look at this situation?" Maya asked, her voice still maintaining that peculiar softness that seemed to draw everyone closer. "I see a young man who's probably been in over his head for months, maybe years. I see someone who got caught up in something bigger than he understood, and now he's paying a price that seems way too high for whatever he did wrong." Danny nodded frantically, tears starting to flow again. Maya's words were describing his life with startling accuracy. He had started small, running errands for people who paid well and didn't ask too many questions. One thing had led to another, and before he knew it, he was in debt to people who didn't accept excuses or payment plans. "But you know what else I see?" Maya continued, her gaze never leaving the woman's face. "I see 4 people who have the power to change this story completely. You could choose to be remembered as the people who showed mercy when no one expected it. You could be the ones who gave a second chance to someone who desperately needs it. The silver-haired man finally found his voice. "Girl, you have no idea what you're talking about," he said, his tone harsh compared to the gentle conversation that had been flowing around the table. "This business doesn't work on second chances. It works on reputation and respect. You let one person slide and soon everyone thinks they can take advantage." Maya turned to look at him and her smile was so gentle it caught him off guard. "I understand about reputation," she said softly. "But tell me, what would be more impressive? Being known as the organization that always follows through on threats, or being known as the one with enough confidence and power to show mercy when they choose to?" The question hung in the air like incense. Maya could see the man processing her words, his certainty wavering for the first time. The heavy-set man with the gold rings shifted in his seat, clearly uncomfortable with the philosophical turn this evening had taken. The woman at the head of the table spoke again, her voice thoughtful. "You're suggesting that mercy is a display of strength rather than weakness?" Maya nodded earnestly. "The strongest person in any room is the one who doesn't have to prove it," she said. "Anyone can hurt someone who can't fight back, but it takes real power, real confidence to choose not to hurt someone when you could easily do it." She gestured around the restaurant, her movements graceful and unhurried. "Look at this place. You walked in here tonight and everyone knew immediately who you were, not because you announced it, not because you threatened anyone, but because true authority doesn't need to shout. It speaks quietly, and everyone listens." The woman's lips curved in what might have been the beginning of a smile. Maya had identified something about her that perhaps even she hadn't fully recognized. The way her quiet voice commanded, more respect than all the shouting and posturing in the world. "You're an interesting young woman," the woman said slowly. "What's your name?" "Maya Johnson," she replied, still speaking in that same soft tone that had somehow become the dominant voice in the room. "Maya Johnson," the woman repeated, as if testing how the name sounded. "And you work here as a waitress?" "I do, but I'm also studying to be a teacher. I want to work with kids who are in situations like Danny here, kids who need someone to believe they can make better choices." The woman's eyes sharpened with interest. "A teacher. And what would you teach these children about situations like this?" Maya considered the question carefully. "I'd teach them that everyone makes mistakes, but mistakes don't have to define who you become. I'd teach them that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit when you're wrong and ask for help. And I'd teach them that there are people in the world who will show them mercy, even when they don't think they deserve it." Danny was listening to every word, his face lighting up with something that looked like hope. The three men were still clearly uncomfortable, but even they seemed caught up in Maya's quiet conviction. "Most importantly," Maya continued, "I'd teach them that real strength isn't about never falling down. It's about getting back up, learning from what happened and making better choices the next time." The woman leaned back in her chair, studying Maya with renewed interest. "And what makes you think this young man would make better choices if given another chance?" Maya looked at Danny, really seeing him for perhaps the first time all evening. "Because he's here," she said simply. "He came to face whatever consequences he thought were waiting for him. He could have run, could have disappeared, but he showed up. That tells me he has character, even if he's made some bad decisions." She turned back to the woman. "And because he called his mother to tell her he loved her. Someone who does that in what he thinks might be his final moments isn't someone who's truly lost. He's someone who still has love in his heart, still has connections to the world that matter to him." The silence that followed was different from the earlier tension. This was a thoughtful silence, the kind that comes when people are genuinely considering new possibilities. Maya could feel the shift in the room's energy, could sense that something fundamental was changing in the dynamic between these five people. The woman was clearly the decision-maker, but Maya realized she had managed to do something remarkable. She had made this powerful, feared leader actually consider an alternative to violence, not through threats or bargaining, but through quiet words about mercy, strength, and second chances. What happened next would determine whether Maya's soft-spoken courage had been enough to save a young man's life, or whether she had simply delayed the inevitable while putting herself in danger. The woman rose slowly from her chair, and Maya felt her heart skip a beat. This was it. The moment when her intervention would either save Danny or condemn them both. But instead of anger, Maya saw something unexpected in the woman's eyes, genuine curiosity and what might have been respect. "Walk with me," the woman said softly, gesturing toward the front of the restaurant. Maya glanced at Danny, who watched her with desperate hope, then followed the woman to the large windows that looked out onto the empty street. They stood side by side in the dim light filtering through the glass, two women from completely different worlds who had somehow found themselves in the same moment. The woman was perhaps 3 inches shorter than Maya, but her presence filled the space around them like gravity. "In 30 years of this business," the woman said, her voice barely above a whisper, "no one has ever spoken to me the way you just did. Do you know why that is?" Maya considered the question seriously. "Because people are afraid," she said finally, "and because they assume they know what you want to hear. And what do I want to hear?" Maya looked at the woman's reflection in the window, studying her face in the dim light. "I don't think you want to hear anything in particular. I think you want to hear the truth even when it's uncomfortable. Especially when it's uncomfortable." The woman smiled then, a real smile that transformed her entire face. "My name is Isabella Torino," she said. "My friends call me Bella, my enemies call me other things. Which am I?" Maya asked without thinking, then immediately wondered if she had pushed too far. "I'm still deciding," Isabella replied, but there was warmth in her voice now. "Tell me about your family, Maya Johnson." The question caught Maya off guard, but she answered honestly. "My mother raised 3 of us on her own. She cleaned office buildings at night and took care of other people's children during the day. She taught us that how you treat people when you have power over them says everything about who you really are." Isabella nodded slowly. "Wise woman. Is she still alive?" "Yes, ma'am. She lives about 10 minutes from here, still cleaning those same office buildings, still taking care of other people's children." "And what would she think of what you did tonight?" Maya thought about her mother's face, the way she looked when she talked about standing up for what was right even when it was scary. "She'd be proud," Maya said quietly. "And probably terrified, but proud." Isabella was quiet for a long moment, looking out at the street. "I had a daughter once," she said finally. "She would have been about your age now." Maya felt her breath catch. The past tense told her everything she needed to know, and suddenly she understood something about the woman standing beside her. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "She was killed in a car accident when she was 16. Drunk driver ran a red light." Isabella's voice remained steady, but Maya could hear the pain underneath. "For a long time after that, I forgot that mercy was an option. I forgot that not every problem needs to be solved with violence." Maya waited, sensing that Isabella needed to keep talking. "But tonight, listening to you speak about second chances and the power of choosing compassion, I remembered something my daughter used to say. She believed that everyone deserved a chance to be better than their worst moment." Isabella turned to look at Maya directly. "She would have liked you." The weight of this revelation settled over Maya like a blanket. She understood now why her words had resonated with this powerful woman. Isabella hadn't just been listening to a waitress talk about mercy. She had been remembering her daughter's voice, her daughter's beliefs about the world. "What was her name?" Maya asked gently. "Maria. She wanted to be a teacher too, just like you." Isabella's smile was sad but genuine. She used to volunteer at the community center, helping kids with their homework. She said education was the only real way to break cycles of violence and poverty. Maya felt tears forming in her eyes. "She sounds like she was an amazing person." She was. "And she would have told me exactly what you told me tonight, that showing mercy takes more strength than showing force." Isabella looked back toward the corner booth where the 3 men sat with Danny. "The question is, what do I do with that reminder now that I've received it?" Maya followed her gaze to Danny, who was sitting perfectly still, as if afraid that any movement might shatter whatever spell Maya had woven around the table. "What does your heart tell you to do?" Isabella laughed, a sound that was both bitter and amused. "My heart? I haven't listened to my heart in years. In my business, the heart is a luxury you can't afford. But maybe that's exactly why you should listen to it tonight," Maya said softly. "Maybe your daughter is trying to tell you something through all of this." The words hung between them like a bridge. Maya had never been particularly religious, but standing in that restaurant with this grieving mother who commanded fear and respect from hardened criminals, she felt like she was part of something larger than herself. Isabella was quiet for a long time, her reflection in the window showing a woman wrestling with possibilities she hadn't considered in years. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a decision that would change everything. "That boy owes us $50,000, she said simply. Money he lost through his own stupidity and carelessness. Maya's heart sank. Despite everything, it seemed like Isabella was going to proceed with whatever punishment she had originally planned. But then Isabella continued. "However, I've decided that his debt can be worked off rather than paid in blood. He'll work for us, doing legitimate jobs until every penny is repaid, and he'll do it under your supervision." Maya's eyes widened in surprise. "My supervision? You seem to have strong opinions about second chances and redemption. Let's see if you're willing to put your time where your mouth is." Isabella's expression was serious but not unkind. "Danny will check in with you every day. You'll make sure he's staying clean, staying out of trouble, and working to pay back what he owes. If he disappears or gets into more trouble, then we return to the original plan." Maya felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders, but she didn't hesitate. "I'll do it," she said firmly. "But I have conditions too." Isabella raised an eyebrow at Maya's boldness. Few people in her position had ever been on the receiving end of conditions or demands, especially from someone with no power or leverage. But instead of anger, Maya saw intrigue in the older woman's eyes. "You want to negotiate with me?" Isabella asked, her voice carrying a mixture of amusement and curiosity. Maya nodded, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was attempting. "If I'm going to be responsible for Danny's rehabilitation, then I need to be able to do it properly. I need him to have a real chance at turning his life around, not just paying off a debt." "Go on," Isabella said, settling back against the window frame as if she had all the time in the world. "First, Danny needs to finish high school. I saw his hands when he was sitting at that table. They're soft, educated hands. He's not a street kid who never had options. He made choices, but I think he made them because he didn't see any other way forward." Maya's voice remained soft but firm. "If he's going to work off this debt, part of that work needs to be getting his education." Isabella considered this. "And how exactly does his education benefit us?" "Because an educated person with a future has more reason to stay out of trouble than someone with nothing to lose," Maya explained. "You want him to pay back $50,000? Give him the tools to earn legitimate money and he'll be able to do it faster and more reliably." The logic was sound and Isabella knew it. She gestured for Maya to continue. "Second, I want him to do community service. Real community service, not just busy work. I want him helping other kids who are in situations like the one he was in." Maya's eyes grew more passionate as she spoke. "You said your daughter wanted to help break cycles of violence and poverty. This would be a way to honor her memory." Isabella's expression softened slightly at the mention of Maria. Maya had struck another chord, connecting Danny's redemption to something deeply personal for the woman who held his life in her hands. "And third," Maya continued, building momentum, "I want your word that if Danny fulfills his obligations, pays back the money, stays out of trouble, finishes school, and completes his community service, then he's truly free. No future obligations, no being called upon for favors, no strings attached. He gets to walk away and build a completely clean life." Isabella was quiet for a long moment, processing these unexpected demands. Maya could see her weighing each condition, considering the implications. In her world, debts were rarely forgiven completely, and people who owed favors to the organization usually remained connected in some way for life. "You're asking me to give up a valuable asset," Isabella said finally. "Someone who owes us money typically becomes useful to us in other ways, even after the debt is paid." Maya nodded, understanding the business logic but refusing to back down. "I'm asking you to give someone a genuine second chance. Not a conditional one, not one with hidden strings. A real clean slate." Her voice grew even softer, more compelling. "The kind of second chance your daughter would have wanted for someone like Danny." The mention of Maria again seemed to hit its mark. Isabella looked back toward the corner booth where Danny sat with the three men, still frozen in terror but now listening intently to every word floating across the restaurant. His future was being decided by a conversation between two women who had met less than an hour ago. "There's something else," Maya said, sensing that Isabella was considering her conditions seriously. "I want to know why Danny really owes you this money. Not the business version. Not the story designed to justify what was supposed to happen to him tonight. The real story." Isabella's eyes sharpened. "Why does that matter?" "Because if I'm going to help him, I need to understand how he got here. And because if he's going to truly change, He needs to understand it too. People can't learn from mistakes they don't fully comprehend. Isabella walked a few steps away from the window, her heels clicking softly on the linoleum floor. When she turned back to Maya, her expression was thoughtful. Danny's father worked for us for 15 years. Good man, reliable, never caused problems. When he died last year, heart attack, completely natural, he left behind some debts of his own. Maya felt pieces of a larger puzzle clicking into place. Danny inherited his father's debts? Not exactly. We forgave those debts out of respect for his father's service. But Danny wanted to prove he could be useful to us too. He started small, running errands, making deliveries. We tried to discourage him, told him to go to college, get a real job. But he insisted. Isabella's voice carried genuine regret now. About 6 months ago, he convinced us to let him handle a larger transaction. Said he wanted to honor his father's memory by being useful to the family. We should have said no, but she shrugged. Sometimes sentiment overrides good judgment. What happened? Maya asked, though she was beginning to understand. He was supposed to collect payment from a client and bring it back to us. $50,000. But the client had a daughter, a sick daughter who needed surgery they couldn't afford. Isabella looked directly at Maya. Danny gave them the money, all of it. The revelation hit Maya like a physical blow. Danny hadn't lost the money through carelessness or stupidity. He had given it away to help a sick child. The young man sitting terrified at that table wasn't a criminal who had gotten in over his head. He was someone who had tried to do good and made a naive, costly mistake. He never told you this, did he? Maya asked, looking toward the corner booth. He was too ashamed. He knew what he had done was wrong from a business perspective, even if his heart was in the right place. So he just said he had lost the money and accepted whatever consequences were coming. Maya felt a surge of emotion, anger at the injustice of the situation, admiration for Danny's sacrifice, and determination to see this through. That changes everything, she said firmly. Does it? Isabella asked. The money is still gone. The principle is still the same. In our business, good intentions don't balance the books. But it means Danny isn't someone who needs to be taught about consequences, Maya replied. He's someone who needs to be taught about finding better ways to help people. He's someone who already has the right instincts but needs guidance on how to use them wisely. Isabella studied Maya's face in the dim light. You really believe you can help him? I believe he can help himself with the right support and opportunities. And I believe that giving him that chance is exactly what your daughter would have wanted you to do. The two women stood in silence for a moment, the weight of the decision hanging between them. Finally, Isabella nodded slowly. All right, Maya Johnson. We'll do this your way. But understand, if Danny fails, if he runs, if he gets into more trouble, if he doesn't live up to these conditions you've set, then the original consequences will still apply. And they'll apply to you as well. Maya felt a chill run down her spine, but she met Isabella's gaze steadily. I understand. And I accept those terms. Isabella extended her hand and Maya shook it, sealing an agreement unlike any that had ever been made in that corner booth. As they walked back toward the table, Maya realized that the next few minutes would change not just Danny's life, but her own as well. She was about to discover that sometimes standing up for what's right leads to responsibilities she never expected to carry. As Maya and Isabella approached the corner booth, the three men looked up with expressions ranging from confusion to outright disbelief. Danny's eyes were fixed on Maya's face, searching for any sign of what his fate might be. The air in the restaurant felt electric with possibility and tension. Isabella resumed her seat at the head of the table, her posture commanding immediate attention. Maya remained standing beside the booth, her heart pounding but her resolve firm. The moment had come to see if her quiet courage had truly changed the course of this evening. Gentlemen, Isabella said, her voice carrying its usual quiet authority, there's been a change of plans. The three men leaned forward, clearly struggling to understand what could have possibly altered their leader's decision. Danny held his breath, afraid to hope. This young man, Isabella continued, gesturing toward Danny, will be given an opportunity to work off his debt rather than face the consequences we originally discussed. The silver-haired man started to object, but Isabella's raised hand silenced him immediately. Maya watched as Danny's face transformed. The hopeless resignation melted away, replaced by overwhelming relief and gratitude. Tears began streaming down his cheeks again, but these were different tears. tears of reprieve, of unexpected mercy, of a future he thought he had lost forever. However, Isabella continued, her tone making it clear that this mercy came with conditions. This opportunity comes with strict requirements. You will report to Maya here every single day. You will complete your high school education. You will perform community service helping other young people avoid the mistakes you've made. And you will work legitimate jobs to pay back every penny of the $50,000 you gave away. Danny nodded frantically, barely able to speak through his emotion. Yes, ma'am. Yes, I'll do all of that. I promise, I swear I'll do everything exactly as you say. Isabella's gaze softened slightly as she looked at the young man. I know about the little girl, Danny. I know why you really gave away that money. Danny's eyes widened in surprise. He had never told anyone the true story. What you did was noble but foolish. If you had come to us, explained the situation, we might have found another way to help that family. Maya felt a surge of admiration for Isabella. Even in showing mercy, she was teaching Danny valuable lessons about communication, about seeking help, about finding better solutions to complex problems. Maya will be your mentor and supervisor, Isabella continued. She's put her own safety on the line to advocate for you tonight. I suggest you don't disappoint her. The warning in her voice was unmistakable, and Danny nodded with fervent understanding. The silver-haired man finally found his voice. Boss, with all due respect, this sets a dangerous precedent. If word gets out that debts can be worked off instead of— Word won't get out, Isabella interrupted, her tone brooking no argument. Because this isn't about changing our business practices. This is about recognizing an exceptional situation that called for an exceptional response. She looked at Maya as she spoke. Sometimes strength is demonstrated through unexpected choices. Maya felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders, but also a sense of purpose she had never experienced before. She was no longer just a waitress observing life from the sidelines. She had become an active participant in changing someone's future, in proving that mercy could coexist with strength. Danny, Maya said softly, addressing him directly for the first time, this is your second chance. Not because you earned it, but because someone believed you could do better with the right support. Don't waste it. Danny looked up at her with eyes full of gratitude and determination. I promise I won't waste this chance. Thank you. I don't even know how to thank you properly. Maya smiled gently. Thank me by proving that second chances matter. Thank me by helping other kids who are facing the same choices you faced. Thank me by showing the world that people can change when someone believes in them. Isabella stood up, signaling that the evening's business was concluded. The three men rose as well, their faces still showing confusion about what they had witnessed. This wasn't how these situations typically ended, and Maya could see them struggling to process the deviation from their normal procedures. Maya, Isabella said, I'll have someone contact you tomorrow with details about Danny's work arrangements and payment schedule. I assume you have a way to be reached? Maya nodded, giving Isabella her phone number. As she wrote it down, she realized that her life was about to change in ways she couldn't even imagine. She was no longer just a college student working her way through school. She was now responsible for helping a young man rebuild his life, under the watchful eye of one of the most powerful people in the city. As the group prepared to leave, Isabella approached Maya one final time. You did something remarkable tonight, she said quietly. You reminded me that there are still people in the world who believe in the power of mercy, who are willing to risk everything for a stranger's second chance. Maya met her gaze steadily. Your daughter would be proud of the choice you made tonight. Isabella's smile was sad but genuine. I hope so. I really hope so. She paused at the door, looking back at Maya one more time. Take care of that boy, and take care of yourself. The world needs more people like you. After they left, Maya found herself alone in the empty restaurant, surrounded by the silence and the lingering weight of what had just occurred. She looked around at the familiar booths and tables, realizing that this place would never look quite the same to her again. Tonight, in this ordinary restaurant, she had discovered something extraordinary about herself. Her phone buzzed with a text message. It was from an unknown number, but she knew immediately who it was from. Thank you for giving me my life back. I won't let you down. Danny, Maya smiled, pocketing her phone and beginning to finish her closing duties. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new responsibilities, and a young man who was counting on her to help him build a better future. But tonight, She had learned that sometimes the most powerful words are spoken in the softest voices, and that true courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, and sometimes it comes from the most unexpected places. As she turned off the lights and locked the door behind her, Maya Johnson walked out into the night knowing that she was no longer the same person who had started her shift that evening. She had found her voice, and in doing so, she had discovered that even the gentlest words can move mountains when they come from a heart brave enough to speak the truth.